Warning, this podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that happens every day. These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
132 in Bush, I've got him at gunpoint.
They're pulling them out.
10-1-1. Advise ready for game.
God!
Welcome to another episode of War Stories. I'm Tom.
And I'm Chuck.
And we are back for another episode. Our scheduling, I mean, we had a hiccup a couple weeks ago, and we weren't able to release an episode. I think we talked about it on the very next episode that did release. Our schedules were all foobar. So we're kind of back into a rhythm. So that being said, the rhythm is War Stories releases on Mondays, and then we do Locker Room Live on Thursdays. If you want to see it live, if you want, go to YouTube, or they can watch it, I think, on Facebook. Instagram always cuts it short, so
it will be there. But it will get cut short.
Maybe we'll do Twitch, because we don't want it to get it stops you at 60 minutes, and we go late.
Late.
Right.
We could put it on Twitch for sure.
So I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I wanted to give that update because Chuck, this week's guest, I know he's been really gracious with his time. I know he's got a heart out, but we want to spend as much time with him as we can. So we're going to forego some of our catching up that might take a couple of minutes, because I want to. Our guest is Michael Sugrue, and he has been in the United States Air Force's security forces. He's a retired police officer who's done global force protection, anti-terrorism, nuclear security, foreign airfield assessments, and airbase ground defense, serving in assignments like flight leader, flight commander, senior watch officer, chief of command post, and chief of security forces. It goes on. This Walnut Creek Police Department Distinguished Service Medal in 2014 for heroic and life-saving actions during a fatal officer-involved shooting in 2012. He is here with us now, and so I just wanted to get there because that's a lot to unpack. Sergeant Sugrue, Michael, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good. Great. We were a little behind the scenes. We were talking before we hit record and realized we were burning this man's valuable time, and we should actually start saying the things that we were talking about while we're recording, because turns out
you did forget one thing, though.
What's that?
You did forget one thing. He's the author of the #1 bestseller, Relentless Courage.
Yes. Well, we'd get to his plug. We don't want to bury.
I know, but it's right there on the screen.
Yeah, that's true. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it right there on the screen. So welcome to the show. We usually kind of start with how you got into military, how you got into law enforcement, but we've already skipped so far ahead in some of those topics just in getting to this point. So talk to us about your transition. You're in the security forces. You spent how many years there?
So I spent 6.5 years in the United States Air Force, served all over the U.S., South America, Middle East, Europe. Got out as a captain. I was also a Phoenix Raven, which is a specialized subset of security forces members. And I went straight into civilian law enforcement in 2004 for the Walnut Creek Police Department, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah. So you and I came on about the same time. I started, my academy started in August of 2002, and then I hit the road in January of 2003. And that was it. So you and I Walnut Creek, for people that don't know, is a suburb of which part of the Bay Area? Is it San Francisco proper, or is it more Oakland?
So it's actually considered more of the East Bay. It's in Contra Costa County. As far as distance from Oakland or San Francisco, you're probably talking about 20 minutes from both cities. Okay. It's considered like a desirable area to live, very high cost of living, very transitory, like during the day, like a lot of people commute there to work or pass through the city. It's got a relatively low crime rate considering all things. And it's like a destination place for shopping, dining, nightclubs, like celebrities go there, famous athletes. I wish I lived there, but it was too expensive, so I had to commute.
Yeah.
Well, so much in the Bay Area is like that, right? Now, especially now.
Absolutely.
Silicon Valley in general. I guess you get there, you come on in 04. Walnut Creek, the reason I asked is because we've talked to, and I have friends from Menlo Park PD, and they would talk about their proximity to East Palo Alto and how they would get called over there all the time for mutual aid type stuff because the East Palo Alto is, for those of you who don't know, is a pretty tough, can be a pretty tough area. Menlo Park, not so much. So I was curious if Walnut Creek had an East Palo Alto equivalent, or were you kind of an island where you didn't butt up against some of the rougher cities like East Palo Alto?
No, the only city that we really bordered up against that was questionable was Concord, but we had a main thoroughfare through our city of people going to like Antioch and Pittsburgh, and those are less desirable areas. So, but generally it's a nice area all the way around.
And then you were there.
Highway.
Yeah, there's an interstate that goes through and a highway as well, and there's BART, which is our Bay Area rapid transit system, which is kind of like the subway. And so a lot of people from like Richmond and Oakland, Pittsburgh, Antioch, Bay Point, they like to come to Walnut Creek to commit crimes, whether it's fraud, theft, armed robbery, sexual assault, you name it. So it's a great place for them to come to and commit crime because there's a lot of money there. So
yeah. Well, and that's, why steal from poor people when you could steal from rich people?
Exactly.
So talk to us. You then spend how many years? You retired a couple years after I did. You retired in what year?
So I retired in 2018. So I hit the streets December 04, and I medically retired in 2018.
Well, that makes three of us.
we just change the name to
recent. Yeah, Chuck is the most recent recipient of his medical pension.
It's a great thing, let me tell you.
Hey, the check goes in whether I'm there or not now.
Exactly, and it's tax free.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when you were there, what was your favorite assignment?
So the thing was, from day one, like I literally knew that I wanted to be undercover at some point. So my dream, my goal was to go on our regional task force. We had a task force at the time called CNET, which was Central Contra Costa County Narcotic Enforcement Team. And that was under the California State DOJ, Department of Justice, B&E, Bureau of Narcotic Enforcement, which is no longer, by the way. There is no more B&E. But we had one officer that would go to that assignment at a time, and that was it. And usually that assignment would be locked up anywhere from 5 to 7 years. And so when I was brand new and I actually met the guy that was on the task force at the time, I was like, you know what? That's what I want to do. That's my goal. That's my dream. And so from day one, I worked graves. I was all about self-initiated activity. I mean, dispatch hated me because I was doing like 20, 30 stops a night, car stops, bike stops, vehicle stops, turning informants, doing searches, getting guns. Like that was my thing. Nice. And I loved it. I loved the hunting aspect of law enforcement. Now the day shift, the cold frauds, like the cold burgs, the retail shit, keep me away from that stuff. Like I don't want to be anywhere near that stuff. So to kind of fast forward, I was on patrol for about 1.5 years, and I actually got made FTO pretty early on. I did that for a couple of years. And then that task force position came on in 2009. It came open. So at that point, I had 5 years on, being a patrol officer and FTO. And literally, it was my dream. I mean, it was like once I got there, I actually told myself, I'm gonna stay in this position as long as I can. And in fact, I may even go to California DOJ B&E. I may transfer lateral when I get done, because for me,
thought about that too.
Yeah, and I got to work in all those cities that we first talked about. I was working in Antioch, in Bay Point, in Richmond, in Oakley, in Oakland. I mean, we did cases all the way down to the Mexico border. We were doing wires
into Arizona. Yep.
Yeah, and it was, we were doing high risk entries. I mean, multiple times a day,
Yeah.
several times a week. I mean, stuff that like my own SWAT team was doing like maybe once a month. We're
Wow.
doing it like literally daily. And so, man, it was a dream come true. And the crazy thing is that, it takes a while, as you know, to like get up to speed, to have informants, to make cases. And I had just got to that point in 2011 where I was literally like on cruise control. I mean, making cases, had great informants, getting tons of money, tons of dope. And then literally the rug got pulled out beneath me. Like my whole world came crashing down at that point.
Oh, wow. Why?
Well, it turns out we didn't know this, but my boss, he was actually worked for California DOJ. He was our task force commander. He was stealing our evidence when we were away at conferences and training, and he was actually selling the dope on the side. He was running illegal prostitution brothels. He was doing interstate gun transports. I mean, like the list goes on and on and on. And
Wow.
there was actually, I think, a 48 hours TV special on it, a 2020. There's been at least 1 or 2 books written about it. And my boss ended up doing 8.5 years in federal prison. He actually got out, I think like 2 years ago, maybe 1.5 years, 2 years ago. But because of that, the whole task force obviously was investigated. The task force got shut down temporarily, we were told. And for a whole year, they kept telling us, don't worry, the task force is coming back. Everything's going to be okay. And as you guys know, that's when in California, they went from like 53 regional task force down to like 17. I mean, literally, they started shutting down all these task force. And then I got pulled back into my PD as an SIU detective. I mean, literally doing like lame dope cases, doing like frauds and theft cases. Like I was bored out of my mind. I mean, had to shave the goatee, get rid of the earrings, and now I'm wearing khakis and a polo. And it was, oh man, I was so miserable. I just couldn't believe that happened.
Yeah, and then a few years later, Prop 47 kicked in to full effect, and that's when narcotics units started decommissioning. Like there started being less and less and less.
Well, they
and were
didn't
trying to
have a
focus
need
more on the
for them because it
vice.
wasn't a crime anymore.
Right. It was all misdemeanor BS, but they were still trying to make like big cases like dope sales or interdiction shit and all those grows and stuff like
How do you
that.
think
But
you
it
get stitches into
small.
those organizations? You get it through the freaking anyway.
Yeah. It's they cut their feet out from underneath, but yeah, that must have been tough, man. How was
It
that?
really was. I mean,
when
I
that was
literally, I had at that time because I was married at the time, and we actually got pregnant during that time, and my daughter was born halfway into those first 2 years. And like I said, my life at that point I thought was going perfect. I mean, it was on cruise control. I was loving the job. And when I got ripped back in, I literally felt like I lost my identity. I lost part of my motivation for what I was doing. And it just, you go from doing these high level cases where you're making a major impact to now we're doing like real low level stuff that doesn't really have much of an impact. And
right.
it's hard to explain for someone that hasn't been there, but it's literally, if you can only imagine, you're literally living your dream. You're doing what you've always aspired to do. And I even remember back in my military days when I was in the jungles of Colombia, and it was like, even back then, I'm like, you know what, I want to be undercover someday. And it was, whether that was for the DEA or for a state level organization or a police department. And so again, to have that ripped out and now be back in Walnut Creek, and I'm going to these staff meetings every day, and it's just like I'm hearing about these cases, and it's just like, oh man, I was depressed for a while. I'm not gonna lie, it was tough.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah,
I know how you feel, man. Definitely.
That I can confirm everything he said. I just wanted to let him go because I was reminiscing. It was being on that task force and doing those kinds of things. Like he said, I didn't need to go out for SWAT because
you scratched that
our
itch.
Our SWAT team, I would have ended up probably on the perimeter detail for a long time.
Right.
And then never made an entry because number one, you're on perimeter, and number two, 75 to 80% of them work out with a call out. Right. So dynamic entries are very rare if you're not a full-time SWAT team that goes and does high risk warrant service. Well, ours wasn't. and there was the criteria for calling them out was crazy. But then I get on the team, and we're the philosophy of the task force, because as the philosophy of B&E, no, you catch it, you clean it. We make our own entries. They had their own entry school. They had their own, like, and the state didn't give shit. So it was a good time to be a cop and a good place to be a cop at,
Yes, absolutely.
And they ran tight ships. B&E wasn't perfect. They were, it was the California Department of Justice. How great could it be? But I remember going up to Sacramento and doing trainings and going to the headquarters and doing the things, and it was a good time. So I can imagine having that taken, especially under such a cloud. But luckily, you were saying that the investigation was done so well and so covertly that you were exonerated before anybody knew anything was even a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the good thing is, when this all came out, it actually got tipped out to a guy. It's really like a crazy story, but the guy that played Joel Kenda on the Homicide Hunter TV show, that guy actually worked for PI out in here before that show. And he's one of the guys that broke this and basically up-channeled it, reported it. We didn't know about it. And then California DOJ brought in a team from Southern California with people we didn't know. And they were actually conducting full surveillance on us. They were doing a wiretap on us.
Whoa.
And, had they not done that, I mean, we would still be under suspicion. And now I will tell you, though, they did find out that there was some previous members that had been under him and on his task force that were involved in this. So this thing ended up splintering off into other police agencies, both in my county and out of the county. So unfortunately, a lot of other officers did get wrapped up in it, but thankfully nobody that was active on the task force when I was there was involved in this thing.
Can I ask you this? I had some friends who were being investigated on a counterterrorism task force, and they used to run counter surveillance, and they figured out one day we're being surveilled, and they started counter surveilling them. So you had two agencies surveilling one another because they were investigating them. They're like, why are these people investigating us? Did you guys ever catch them surveilling you guys, or did you ever know that they were doing any of that stuff? And if you didn't, second part to the question, what was it like when you found out you were being investigated? Was it kind of like you felt victimized, or you were like, fuck, that sucks? Or you're like, whew, I'm glad it's over?
Well, no, I mean, the first thing that happened was we got interrogated. I got called into a small room with investigators and was literally being interrogated. So I felt like a criminal. I felt like a suspect. Right. And there was some things that they asked us about, which weren't like overtly like apparent of what they were, but then you start thinking of like, well, now wait a minute, that is kind of weird. You know what I mean? Like, and not to go into full on detail, but just to give you an example. So this guy, our boss, when we would have major raids, he would do asset forfeiture, and he would actually, take things like Rolexes, like high-end electronics, like one time, like music studio, like all these things that he believed that people bought with illegal drug money. And he would put these things up on a public auction site. But he would actually go to people and say, hey, like, just to give you a heads up, we're actually going to be putting this stuff up on the site. So if you want to bid on it, blah, blah, blah. And, I honestly, I mean, call it naive, but like, I didn't know about this stuff. I didn't really think about it. And thank God I never bid on anything or got anything. Right. But there was other people that did. And so, they got wrapped up into that aspect as well, where there's kind of like this gray area where they didn't realize like, oh crap. And then when this whole thing went down, like you said, it's just, there was major ripple effects. And that initial feeling of, I would say the first time in my career, just feeling like I was a suspect, like feeling like I was a criminal. And when we were being interrogated, we didn't know that they had surveilled us. We didn't know that there was a wiretap investigation. And so, literally we're just thinking like, man, these guys think we're involved. I mean, how could we not if our boss is doing all this?
Right.
Understandable.
Well, and that's, you go back to the old LA sheriff scandal when I think, what was it, like 13 deputies went to prison over it, or it was the whole major narco bureau. I think it was 13 million was what they had stolen over the course of all of the years they were doing it. And it was pretty much the whole unit. And they had developed a system, like an unspoken system to keep any do-gooders out of the unit, and
Mm.
they could vet which candidates came into the unit. They could handpick them, and then they could test them to see if they were dirty. So when you come up across scandals like that, right? Like everybody thinks when they talk about scandals, they always think of Rampart, which we mentioned. But
Right.
if you actually do the research and you actually look at the after action reports, there was most of Rampart was bullshit. And there was very little discipline taken by a lot of the police officers. It just made the headlines because of, the LAPD and the scandal and the Contra Costa County thing. That, it wasn't widespread across the division, but it was high up. This was shocking.
Absolutely.
And I was already out of task force. I was working the road as an FTO at the time, and I remember hearing all about it. And it was like, oh shit, it was a big deal.
And here's another crazy thing. So like when our boss, I don't know how this all happened, but somehow our boss was in charge of like all the illegal brothels in the county. So when agencies or police chiefs would contact him, they would say like, hey, you know what? We've got this suspicious massage parlor. We think there's prostitution going on. And so we would have to do an operation, and we would get sent in, and I had to do a few of these. And the crazy thing is our, Norm, our boss, he would say like, we're not using any audio recording devices because they have the RF detectors and this and that. And so blah, blah, blah. But the thing is that we didn't know this. He was running his own brothels. So he would actually send us into the brothels he was running, and he would give them a heads up. And so we would just get like a legit massage. So we'd go in there and we'd write a report and come back out and say, hey, sir,
Nothing happened.
Yeah, there was no solicitation from SA or for sex. It's a legit business. And then so now literally we confirm that his brothel is a legit business. I mean, it was crazy.
He was his own quality assurance. He was his own inside man.
Exactly.
That's wild.
So Chuck, I can tell you.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
Again, I'll co-sign on it. Our task force was in a different county. The next biggest agency that had, strip joints and all that kind of stuff, because for the most part in our quiet parts of the county, that was forbidden. Like there was one sex shop for the whole entire county. It was pretty, conservative. But right across the county line in a little town called Santa Maria, they had all that stuff. Well, Santa Maria PD was burnt. And so they would ask our board of governors to loan our team, because we were the next biggest undercover unit. We would actually get paid overtime to go do compliance checks on strip joints.
Oh, wow.
And the joke was, if you're the motherfucker that finds the violation that gets this place shut down and kills this overtime assignment, you're a dead man. But that's some of the stuff we'd have to do. We ran prostitution stings off of Craigslist, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So to me, it's thinking back to my task force commanders, thinking back to my commanding officers. One of our assistant commanders was the senior district attorney investigator, and he was the second in command of the whole task force. So you can imagine if that guy was dirty, how much he could get away with.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
That's
Cover his
crazy.
tracks. That's crazy. That's crazy that your boss was like, he seemed like he had his ship pretty wired tight. I mean, but he just got unlucky. Do you know how that all broke free and how everyone found out?
Well, that's the crazy thing. And there's a book and a show on this, but so there's more to the story. So I'll try to make this as short as possible. So our boss had worked for Antioch Police Department before he worked for Cal DOJ. And when he worked there was another guy named Chris Butler who worked there. Now, Butler, I think he eventually got fired for like covering up like an on-duty vehicle accident, some other shady shit. Well, Chris Butler became a private investigator. But here's the crazy shit. So during when this went down, Chris Butler was already filming for Lifetime, I think, TV network for a mommy PI show. So like Chris Butler was on like, no, when he was a PI. But the thing is, is
so he'd already got it.
So Chris Butler was my boss's Norm. They were best friends back in Antioch. And so Norm really looked up to Chris Butler. And Chris Butler is literally like he's now famous, right? He's filming this TV show with these mommy PIs. He's doing like Dr. Phil interviews. He's like all over the news. He's having these huge parties with like all these attractive women. He's driving these high-end cars and being real flashy. And I think Norm saw his lifestyle and saw what he was doing, and he wanted to be part of that. And so I really think that this Chris Butler guy, who honestly, I mean, you know, they both went to prison, but Chris Butler was like the mastermind behind all this stuff. And he's the one that pulled in Norm into this. But the guy that broke it, like I said, so this guy, I think he was former NYPD. I don't know if he retired or left, but he moved out to California. He was looking for work. I think in the want ads, he finds this Chris Butler guy, and he ends up working for him. And he starts doing like setups for like women going through divorces and husbands going through divorces, where like basically
because real dirty shit.
Yeah, he was like a good looking dude. And so they would try to get like pictures of wives cheating with this guy, and then the husband would have ammunition for the divorce.
Oh, yeah. Oh shit.
Yeah, it was like
so
all
fabrication
this crazy
of evidence.
Yeah, and then what happened was
it's still cheating, even if you're the one who set him up to cheat.
Yeah, and so they
That's
at
wild.
one point
That's
tested
fucking
him,
wild.
and they gave him, I forget how many pounds of marijuana, and it was still illegal back then, and they wanted him to get rid of it. Well, he sat on it because he didn't know what to do, and he was freaked out. And then I think he ended up just basically giving them his own money, saying that he sold it. And then it went from marijuana to meth. And finally, he's like, I can't be involved in this shit. Like, I can't do this. And so that's when he went to somebody who I think went to like the head DA investigator. Like, it was this little network of people that trusted each other. And part of it was this magazine called the Diablo magazine also exposed it, because they're interviewing the Butler guy about his mommy PI network. It's just crazy. I mean, like I said, there's so many like interweaving things that happened in this. And and like I said, after this all went down, that dude became like a famous TV actor and plays Joel Kenda, homicide hunter, during all the reenactments. So it's just, yeah, it's crazy.
Oh
wow.
my gosh.
You can't make this shit up. I mean,
that's what we always tell people.
That's wild. It's like, do you think that that'd be something thought up by some director? You're like, no, that's just too much. It's too much for that. No. It makes your brain hurt. That is crazy. Just like all the interconnections and interweavings of that. Oh man.
Well, the crazy thing too is when like the TV shows and the Diablo magazine were highlighting this Chris Butler guy. Chris Butler would set up fake surveillances and fake stings with his own people. And he would show the TV show, like, look, this is what we're doing. And we just caught this husband cheating on his wife. And it was all like staged. Like everything was staged. Like none of it was real.
Wow. I mean, scumbags are going to scumbag, right? I will say this. So if you can believe this, the Norm, the guy you're talking about, Chuck, he was a cop for 25 years, worked for Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement. I may have met the dude. It's entirely possible I met him when I was at a training, or he taught me a class. I don't know, because he worked for the Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement, and they did a lot of, they had their own cadre of instructors. Yeah. 14 years is what he got sentenced to. Federal judge sentenced him to 14 years. Apparently, the judge was pissed and told him that he was the example of pure greed, and because he had the gumption to ask the judge for leniency, and the judge was like, nope, 14 years for 5 counts of possession and distribution of marijuana and methamphetamine, theft of federal records, civil rights conspiracy, and robbery. So what's crazy to me, though, is everybody loves a comeback story. I'll just say, he does motivational speaking or something about how to overcome making bad decisions, I guess. I don't know. So
he got his doctorate actually in prison, believe it or not. And,
that's what I gotta do. Go to prison to get my doctorate.
Fuck. I don't know if it's theology, but he speaks now about Christ-centered intervention, and he's born again and all these things. But I will tell you, he did reach out to me when he got out of prison, and he did apologize.
Oh, he did?
And I will give him credit for that. He gave me a very sincere apology. He actually ended up reading my book, and we've had communication. I'm connected with him actually now on social media. So,
So like I said, everybody loves a comeback story.
yeah, and honestly, from what I can see, he's turned his life completely around, and he did pay his dues. I think the actual time he did, I want to say it was like 8.5 years or something like that. I know he was sentenced to 14. I've personally forgiven him. I kind of look at things differently after all I've been through. But yeah, he did turn his life around. So, and he's out there trying to do his own thing and trying to help in the ways that he can. So,
well, that's good to know. That's good to know that it's legit, because when
absolutely,
you see that kind of stuff, the proof is always in the pudding, and you would hope that something possessed, hopefully something good possessed people to get into this profession to begin with. I hate to think that there's a majority of cops out there who get into police work just to be dirty, although I know that's a fact as well, just like we know that there are gang members that join the military for the tactical training. But I would like to think that most police officers view it as a calling, and they get into it for the right reasons. And while some of them may stray, like the LA County Sheriff, we talked about it, that all started over a pizza party. Literally started because the sergeant was like, you know what? You guys this was a big investigation. You guys earned a pizza party, and I'm going to use this $100 bill out of this mountain of $100 bills of a couple $1 million, and we're just going to buy pizza. And that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was the moment everybody kind of knew they could start getting away with stuff. So it's never unless you got into this job for the wrong reasons, it's never I guess it's never something that you find yourself or look to be doing. It's just something you kind of fall into. Even the guy from New York said at some point, he was like, holy shit, look how far I've already come. So,
yeah, I think it's a slippery slope. And I do agree with you. I think 99.9% of people do get in this profession for the right reasons. And I think even Norm got into the profession for the right reason, but I think he strayed.
Yeah.
I think a lot of things happened, and he got tempted, and it was, at first a very small thing, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yep.
And it's one of those things, and I look back too, and it's just like, you got to go with that gut instinct and that feeling. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. And you got to trust that feeling.
And you got to,
I
think about him sorry, Chuck, hold on. I think about him in, copying to what he did, apologizing to you, reading your book, all that kind of stuff. And then you contrast some of the other guys who, give you the bird and say, F you, I didn't do nothing. And then they just rot in a prison cell, knowing that they can hopefully find their money after they get out. Like those are the guys that I would rather just see rot. The guys that actually want to change and be better again. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, good on them. That helps.
And there's a couple guys that were involved that, I want to see them rot, because they never acknowledged it. They never apologized. And, they did their time, but they've never accepted it. They've never changed their lives. So yeah, it goes both ways. And I used to be a very black and white person, and I don't mean that like by race or ethnicity, but it was kind of like, if you broke the law, you're going to jail. I don't care what your circumstances are. I don't care what your background is. I don't care what you've been through. And now I look at everything differently, just given all the shit that I've been through. And I've kind of learned to be less judgy and kind of like get to the root of like what's causing these things and why are these things happening.
And I think that's the natural course of time, right? As I've gotten a little bit more capable of playing and I was pretty good at playing in the gray area as a cop, but I still had a lot less tolerance, for the things that now I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of get where they're coming from on that. But I just, like I said, I just think that comes with the natural course of time. I don't know. Yeah.
And I think a lot of this stuff, it's if you look at prisoners and they try to flip guards, they have them do something real small, something minute. And then they're like, hey, just to let you know, I have you on that. And if you don't do the next thing, I'm just going to tell on you. And it's so small, but you can lose your job. So it's like you fuck up one time, and you're like, shit, I'm already in too deep. I'll lose my career. Might as well just keep going, I guess. And
Yeah.
shit like that happens until you're like, fuck, this is not right. This is not me. You know, like it can happen. It's a very, like you said, it's a very slippery slope. And that's wild that happened and you had to go through that. And then you go back out and now you're a detective, you know, doing all this SIU stuff. What was it like going back into the field after all that, and how'd the rest of your career go? And like,
yeah, because then you get involved in an incident and you end up winning a medal, and that's pretty far removed from the CNET scandal.
Well, it was actually a mixed blessing, because the thing was, when I was at CNET and on the task force, I was never at the PD. I was like never in Walnut Creek. I mean, unless there was a case tied to that city. I may have gone to like a meeting once a month. Well, when I got forced back into the in-house investigations, then I was upstairs with the administration, you know, the chief's office is right there, the captains, the lieutenants, the entire investigation bureau. I'm going to meetings constantly. So now I'm having constant FaceTime. And so because of that, I actually ended up getting promoted to sergeant. I got promoted to sergeant in November of 2012. So that roughly was about, I want to say, a year and a half after I got forced back in. I ended up getting promoted to sergeant. And it was at that time quicker and faster than anybody had. I mean, I beat out a bunch of senior people that were putting in for it. And it was actually December 26th. I'm a brand new patrol sergeant. It's literally my second solo shift, because I'd gone through like a little informal FTO process. I'm working graveyard shift. I'm supposed to, you know, start on the day after Christmas, get off the next morning. And I was involved in, you know, a fatal shooting. And I won't go into like the full story. It's in my book. I talk about it in my interviews, but basically there was a subject with a huge knife, like the knife you've seen from the Michael Myers, the Halloween movies.
Yeah.
He was trying to stab. Yeah. And he's literally trying to stab through a bedroom door. This poor couple is physically barricading themselves inside their bedroom. And when we get there, I'm first on scene. Another officer joins me, and we just start running towards the scream of a female. It sounds like she's being killed inside this condominium. And we got more officers coming, but her and I eventually, just this one officer, we make entry, and the guy confronts us at the top of the stairs with this huge knife. And we're giving commands. He's not reactive. He's not responsive. And moments later, he just takes the knife up over his head in a stabbing position, starts coming towards us down the stairs. And unfortunately, I had to take his life, not only to save my life, but the lives of the couple that was barricaded upstairs. And it was that incident I call it my tipping point, because, you know, like every officer, I had been involved in hundreds of critical incidents before that, but I never talked about them. I never processed them. I just brushed them off, you know, said this shit doesn't bother me, just stuffing it inside. And for whatever reason, and I mentioned earlier about all those high risk entries, I mean, none of that stuff fazed me, right? But for whatever reason, this incident, it took away that feeling of invincibility that I had had my entire military career. And at this point, you know, 8 years in my civilian law enforcement career, I felt untouchable. Like I never once thought I was going to die. I never once thought anybody was going to kill me. I mean, we know that's a reality, but literally I felt untouchable. I felt invincible. And I don't know if part of it was because my daughter was so young at the time, and it was just this feeling like, no, I can be killed. And that feeling of invincibility was just, it was gone in a millisecond. And that led to a snowball chain of events. I mean, even though it was a completely justified shooting, we saved lives. I mean, they testified to it. We ended up getting sued federally almost immediately. And I ended up enduring a 4-year federal lawsuit. And I was actually a defendant in federal court in San Francisco, went full trial in 2016.
Man.
And thank God we prevailed. We won the trial. But during that whole time, my life is just falling apart. My marriage is done. I'm drinking way too much, like constant nightmares, you know, and I'm not talking to anybody about this shit because I didn't believe in peer support. I didn't believe in therapists. I didn't reach out to anybody. I'm just stuffing it all down inside. And it literally got to the point where I was trying to get killed in the line of duty. And it was this weird dichotomy. It's hard to explain. And the doctor, I co-wrote my book with a psychologist, but I had this fear of dying, but I wanted to die at the same time. And it was just this constant back and forth.
Let me guess, you would go into work, you're fucking depressed, you go into work and you're like, fuck it, put me by myself, don't let me work with a partner. and I'm just going to go in the nastiest neighborhoods. I'm going to stop the nastiest people. I'm going to do the nastiest things. I'm going to go through the nastiest neighborhoods, the nastiest alleys, and try to get into shit because I just don't care. And I'm done. It's not that that you wanted to die because you have that fear of dying, but it's like you just had no care for yourself, and you wanted to work by yourself because you knew that you were just at that point. And I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, like for me, I mean that's partly true, but like for me, it was a little bit different because my whole mindset was, and again, my daughter was young at this time. She was only 6 years old. I'm going through a horrible, contentious divorce. I'm fighting for custody of her. She's my everything. And I had this feeling that my ex-wife was just going to erase all memory of me and that my daughter would never know how much I loved her and how much I cared about her. And so I never had a plan to kill myself off duty,
Right.
not a single time. But I told myself, if I can get killed in the line of duty, I'm going to be a hero. There's no way the PD's ever going to let my daughter, not know who I was. Like they're never going to forget about me. Like shit, there's going to be a statue or some street or highway named after me. And my daughter will always know who I was and the hero that I was. And so, and for me, I was a sergeant, so we didn't have, partners like that, but I was going to calls like racing officers to the scene, trying to be the first one there, knowing weapons were involved, knowing it was a dangerous scene, or even putting my officers' lives in danger. And I'll give you an example where we had a call of disturbance in progress at a known flop house at a border, the Concord area. And there was always tons of shit bags there. We had alert flags with dispatch, like send multiple officers. And there was another supervisor on another team. And I heard this come out and I can hear the officers, they're meeting up to come up with a game plan. So they're meeting up. They're getting a strategic game plan of how they're going to approach this residence, how they're going to make contact. And I literally just drove past all of them, pulled up right in front of the house and just started walking towards the front door because I didn't care. And I pulled them out of that into danger. I put my tactics aside, my officer safety aside. Like I said, I was hoping I got killed. I mean, I really was. It wasn't that I didn't care. I literally wanted to die. I did not want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I know that kind of leads us to a good place because I know we're limited on time with you, but you then get hooked up. How did you get hooked up with this doctor? Is it Dr. Springer, right?
Dr. Shauna Springer. She's a PhD, Harvard graduate. She worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs for many years. So she's worked with hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of combat veterans. She's also worked with first responders. And this is the crazy story. So I didn't know her. But at this point, so we started working on this book right before COVID happened. And at that point in my life, I was already kind of big on social media. I was already speaking all over the country, doing podcasts all over the world. And she reached out to me on LinkedIn and just sent me a cold message saying, hey, I'd love to set up a phone call to let you know what I'm doing in the realm of mental health and officer wellness. And I want to see what you're doing. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm that kind of guy. I'm like, if somebody reaches out, I'm like, yeah, let's connect, let's talk. And so she calls me up. And at that time, and she still is, she works for Stella in Chicago, but she's the chief clinical psychologist. And they deal with a medical procedure called stellate ganglion block, which treats the physical symptoms of post-traumatic stress. And so she's telling me about this. I'd never heard about it. I'm kind of thinking in my mind, like, this seems pretty crazy. I don't know if this is legit. And then she asked me about my story. And so I tell her my story, the story that's in the book. I mean, this story will freaking knock your socks off. I guarantee it. And after she's done, she goes, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I laughed and I said, well, I briefly thought about it. I've been asked this before. I said, but to be honest with you, after, decades of report writing, I'm freaking burnt out of writing shit. And with my post-traumatic stress, I don't have the focus. I don't have that motivation, that drive that I used to have. And so we just left the call at that. 2 weeks later, she hits me back up and she said, look, Michael, and I have to tell you, she'd already written 3 books at this point. So she wrote one with a military guy. She wrote 2 of her own books. She's very established, very well known. Calls me back and she says, I can't stop thinking about your story. She said, I've heard hundreds and hundreds of stories, but your story is very unique and your story is going to help save countless lives. And without even meeting her in person, she says, I want to do this project with you. I want to make this book happen. And I just knew in my heart, and I said, let's do this. And literally COVID happened. And so for the first almost year, we didn't even meet in person. We did Zoom meetings every week for 2 hours at a time. And we ended up publishing this book in April of 2022. And the book, it's been a #1, actually international bestseller, over 40 weeks, sold in over 8 countries. And there's no other book like it. And I'll tell you why. And I'll show you here, but it's called Relentless Courage, Winning the Battle Against Frontline Trauma. And the thing is that every chapter has 2 parts. The first part is my story told in my voice all the way back to childhood until present day. But the second half of every chapter, Doc Springer comes in, she breaks everything down, she explains it, very easy to understand terms. We really show the human side behind the badge and the uniform. And together we show a pathway to healing. And one other thing I'll say is that you guys have probably heard of Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. He's kind of like the GOAT of like officer wellness, of like, he's an ex-Army Ranger. He's written 11 books. He's been speaking for decades. I had actually seen him speak as an officer 2 different times. He didn't know me, but we reached out to him before we published this and said, would you just be willing to read the manuscript and just let us know what you think? Maybe give us like a couple lines that we can use on the back cover or the front cover. And he agrees. I got to tell you, like, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman is a stand-up guy. I mean, a good dude. Agrees to do it. And he loved it so much that I asked him, would you be willing to write the foreword for our book? And he said, I'd be absolutely honored. I mean, without hesitation, he agreed to write the foreword. And so that's how powerful this project is.
Cool.
And
Wow.
it's saving marriages, it's saving careers, but most importantly, it's saving lives. And a year and a half after we published it, we finally did the Audible version. And so we did the Audible version in our own voices. We went to a professional music studio where like famous artists have recorded, went in there, and I relived every single incident when I recorded it. So when you hear this, I mean, you're going to get goosebumps. You're going to get shivers because I'm literally there at the scene when you hear my voice in the Audible. So I just can't tell you like how much I believe in this project and how excited I am about it. And the messages, the feedback that I get, it's just astounding.
Well,
Yeah. I mean,
so where can people find it?
So the book is on Amazon. It's in paperback, hardcover, Kindle, Audible. You can also get it online at walmart.com, barnesandnoble.com, but that's the best sources. And again, I guarantee anybody watching or listening to this, once you start it, you will not be able to stop. I guarantee it.
that's awesome, man. Really?
Well, I know we have a limited amount of time, but I also know that you have somebody you would like to dedicate this episode to. So I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your dedication.
Absolutely. So it's my stepfather. His name is Mike Gormley. And to give you a little brief background, so when I was very young, my parents got divorced and he came into my life and married my mother. And he was a stand-up guy, a cop's cop. And he's the whole reason I went into law enforcement. I actually was a police volunteer at 8 years old for his first police department, the Sausalito Police Department. I later became a police explorer at Richmond Police Department. And he is my absolute hero, my everything. And at the height of all this trauma, it was after the shooting, going through the lawsuit, losing my marriage, he got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And it was determined that it was directly related to his service at Richmond Police Department. And he had also worked for the California Department of Justice after he retired from the Richmond Police Department. But he passed away at the young age of 58 years old. And my book is actually dedicated to him. When you open up the book and you read the very beginning of it, that is why I did this project, because of him. And I mean, I'll tell you right now, like, I am half the cop that he was. I mean, this guy was a legend, but more importantly, he was a phenomenal father. My biological father was a drug addict and an alcoholic. And this man changed my future. He changed my life. And I have heard from so many people that this man worked for on how he mentored them and brought them up and lifted them up and changed their life. So I want to dedicate this episode to Lieutenant Mike Gormley, my father, my hero, my everything.
Well, rest easy, brother. We got it from here.
Yeah, wow.
And yeah, I can totally, the very same task force commander who was working for the DA's office, as soon as he left the task force, same thing. He came down with a rare form of cancer, and it was 100% tied to all the labs and all the police work and all that kind of stuff. So I sympathize, and we always miss our dads the most. My dad is a cop, and Chuck's dad's a cop, and he's facing his battle right now. So we appreciate your dedication. Thanks for sharing that one with us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And there's one thing I do want to say though, like as being like a peer support counselor and stuff like that for the agency that I served with, a book like that I think is very, very good, and I can't believe I haven't heard of it, because I would have read that when I was going through all of my shit that I was dealing with. And I got to say, like, that thing that's super powerful. What are you talking about and how you guys wrote it? I mean, it's amazing. Is there anything though that you could give to people who might be out there struggling that maybe could help them, that haven't read your book yet, that maybe are going through some turbulent times in law enforcement?
Well, I'll tell you that for me, the hardest thing I ever did in my entire life was asking for help. Nothing in the military compares, not my shooting, nothing in civilian law enforcement. And when I first asked for help, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed for a couple of years after that. But now, gone through the full recovery process, and I'm now on the other side of this, and I'm living a phenomenal life, a better life than I ever imagined. And so I want people to know that no matter how bad you think it is, no matter how dark it is for you, because I do get it. Like I said, I was at the point where I literally was trying to kill myself in the line of duty. But I will tell you that there's endless resources out there, things that I didn't know about, from text lines, from hotlines to retreats, and all these resources I have in the back of my book. But I also want people to know that you can reach out to me personally on any of my social media platforms. I'm on literally every single site that you can imagine. I check my messages every day. And if you need resources, I will point you in the right direction. But I want you to know it does get better.
It's true. It does. Don't choose a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, Michael, thanks for coming on, man. This was a good time. And people should check out the book. It's at Amazon.com. It is called Relentless Courage. Do you have a website or anything like that?
I'm not that high speed, honestly. I'm just a retired guy, but I am on LinkedIn. That's my main platform. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, Parler, Truth. I mean, you name it, just type in Sergeant Michael Sugrue, Sugrue. And one thing I want to mention too about the book real quick is that, if you're not sure, if you're kind of on the fence, I'll tell you this and I'll give you a challenge. The amount of written reviews that this book has already on Amazon, it's unparalleled. You can look at other books and actually look at the number of written reviews. This one has over almost 700 ratings, but it has over 500 written reviews that are multiple paragraphs long, where people are literally pouring out their heart and soul. And I challenge you to find another book, another law enforcement book that has that many heartfelt written reviews. There is no other book like it. And I will tell you that it will help save your relationships, whether it's with your wife, your partner, your husband, your children. It can help save your career, but most importantly, it can help save your life.
Well, there you go. So get that book. I would sounds like I'm gonna have to read it, and because my other favorite one I like to recommend is Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. So
yeah, it's an audio book, so people like me, if you don't like to read, you can listen to it.
Chuck, it's not
I hate reading.
Yeah. I don't like
I hate reading. I can't do it.
Yeah, it's ADHD. Come on.
Yeah. So Chuck, what do you have for us here at the end?
Well, Sergeant Sugrue, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you all today for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow us on Instagram at war_stories_official and our Facebook at War Stories Podcast. If you're already following, we'd really appreciate if you could share our post and help spread the word. You can also check us out, the link in our bio on both platforms to find all of our social media, our media links, and our website. Our podcast is available on all major streaming platforms, including YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit that notification bell. So anytime we go live or time we post anything, you can get notified there. Do you have a story to tell, or you know someone who does? You're always looking. We're always looking for law enforcement, veterans, corrections officers, dispatchers, firefighters, medics, ER docs, and ER nurses to feature on the show. If you're interested, email us. Actually, no, go to LinkedIn. LinkedIn.com/War Stories Podcast, and you can link up with Dylan right there. He can get you booked. If you have LinkedIn, you guys can share it. And if you don't have one and you don't know how to message us on any of the other platforms, you can go to booking.warstories@gmail.com, and I will periodically go and check. But the best and fast way to get a hold of us is go to LinkedIn.com/War Stories Podcast and get in touch with our producer Dylan. We'd love for you to share a story. If you know someone who'd be a great fit, please send them our way. And check the link check us out on TikTok at www.tiktok.com/War Stories Locker Room. And you can also link up with producer Dylan there. Thank you all for the support. Stay safe.
And until our next episode, come home with your shield or on it.